weird. I mean, you guys are kneeling, and then you're standing, and then you're kneeling, and then you're standing, and then you're chanting, and then you're smelling this incense stuff that you're walking around up and down, and you're squirting people with water. And it's like, what are you guys doing?
Hello and welcome to Kept in Her Heart, where we talk about all things faith-related. I'm your host, Jenny Fuchs. Today, Jason joins us, and he's going to share his testimony and his faith journey from vowing never to be Catholic to finding his home in the Catholic Church. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you.
Can you just share with us about your testimony, your faith journey?
Sure can. So I grew up Lutheran. Yeah. My family and I didn't go to church very often. It was like an Easter, Christmas type of deal. I was an only child. Throughout elementary and middle school, didn't have a lot of friends or anything like that either, but we still did the Lutheran, it's not CCD, but I can't remember what they called it. But anyway, so I was a part of a church, but really not involved in living in it. Okay. Throughout high school, that's when I gained friends and stuff, but probably fell more away from church altogether. I still had belief in Jesus and in God, so somebody had told me this once before, but so like Jesus was in my life, Jesus would come with me, but sometimes I would drop him off at the street corner, and then I would go forward and then go do whatever. Sure. So I didn't have wasn't a very Christian life in some aspects. And then graduated high school, went down to Florida for school, lived in Kissimmee for a year. There was probably a stint of 10 years. I bet you I never even went to church. Okay. Still had the faith, but not at all like it is now. Moved back up to Wisconsin after I graduated down in Florida, and we meaning me, continued a party life and hanging out with friends, drinking, partying, doing whatever, until I met a woman at a wedding, and was introduced to her, and we started to hang out at the wedding, and we were having fun dancing and stuff like that. For some reason, I started talking to her about when I was a young kid, I would pray at night. And it would be praying for somebody to love me as much as I would love them, and that we'd be able to, grow together. And she said that she was actually praying the same thing back when she was a young kid too. So That was, I don't know, I mean, it hit me while we were dancing and doing stuff like that, but I don't think it like hit me. But at any rate, I tried giving her my phone number, and I asked if she would call me later, and I'm pretty sure she said no. But at any rate, I knew who her friend was, and I called her friend up asking if I would be able to speak with, get this girl's phone number, and she says, actually, she's sitting right here. So I had an in, so I was able to talk to the girl, and was able to get her to go out on a date with me. And then through the ups and downs, eventually I was able to woo her in.
Excellent.
Yeah. We had a relationship for 2 years, and then I think it was about 2 years, and then I asked her to marry me. Awesome. Might not even been 2 years. Year and a half. Once we got married, at that point in time, she was Catholic, but probably not devout Catholic at that point in her life. Mm-hmm. And I told her at that point that I'm not going to be Catholic. It's not, I was raised Lutheran, and then friends that I've had, we would talk church and religion and stuff like that, even though we didn't really tend to do stuff like that. But they were, we'll say, anti-Catholic, and through other things that I read, I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. That's not going to happen.
Sure.
And at that point, she was okay with it. We decided to find a church that we both enjoyed, which was UCC, so United Church of Christ is what it was called. When we got married, instead of doing the whole big wedding and all of that stuff, we decided to go to Hawaii and get married on a beach by a woman. I think she called herself a pastor. So I'm not sure what religion it was or whatever, but I remember she blew a conch shell before the wedding.
Okay.
Yep. So we said our vows on the beach in Maui. Came back, and then the pastor of the UCC gave us another wedding blessing or whatever at the party that we had. And fast forward, going to UCC Church, was part of the financial group. My wife was in part of the women's groups. At that point in time, I am working a job. It was locating underground telephone cables, fiber optics, and stuff like that. So Digger's Hotline. That company just flat out vanished. It went bankrupt in the weirdest way I would think of a company would go bankrupt. I had a company truck. I had a company credit card. I went to work one day and tried to put gas in my truck, and the credit card didn't work. I'm like, okay, that's weird. So I bought gas because, well, maybe they did something, whatever. Go home, and then over the weekend at some point, I went out to go to my work truck, and my truck is gone. It's like, what? So over some phone calls and a lot of communication and trying to figure it out, the company went bankrupt, and the truck got repoed and all this stuff. And I had personal things in there, and so, yeah. So that was a crazy part of life, because at that point we had somewhat just recently moved into a different house. Had our first child, and he was still I wasn't infant, he was going to daycare at that point, but at any rate, so young kid, lost a job, don't know what I'm going to do. Attempted to try going back to college to get a degree. All those doors were just getting slammed shut. There was different reasons, but whatever, it didn't matter, it wasn't working. And then I get a phone call one day, out of the blue, by a guy. He calls up, says, "Hey, you Jason?" "Yep, Jason. You know how to work on small engines, and you know, been a manager and stuff before?" And I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "Well, got your name from Scott." I'm like, "Scott?" And then he said the last name. I was like, "Oh, he's on the board that I'm at church."
Sure.
So he put my name in at this company. Farm and Home it was called, but at any rate, so for a kind of a service tech manager person. Mm-hmm. So he had asked if I'd be interested in an interview, and I was like, looking at my schedule, I'm pretty open. He didn't know I lost my job.
Okay.
He didn't know anything that was going on. So this was like a huge God moment, where God's like, "Oh, shutting this door and we're opening this up."
Wow.
And I was like, perfect. It's a great stepping stone. I'm gonna be there for 6 months, and I'll move on to something different. Because it was a job that was kind of like, whatever, sure. Right? So took the job on and started really enjoying the work, and enjoyed the boss that I had. He was one of the owners. Super great guy. Only one flaw is that he was Catholic. So every once in a while he would nudge something about the Catholic, faith in there, and you guys should be doing blah, or this is how you should be doing things, right? Yeah. But in a gentle, loving, nice way that I wasn't gonna be like, forget you type of thing, right?
Right.
Through those little nudges, whatever, still talking about religion, and my wife Lacey and I, we were still going to church. My wife went with a high school friend of hers, long time friend, and she's Catholic, her friend, and they went up to Duluth Girls Weekend, whatever it was, and Fran took my wife Lacey to Mass and confession, and Lacey comes back and tells me that she went to confession, she went back to Catholic church, she was pretty bubbly about it, and I was like, well, whatever, it's just go, do whatever. And so anyways, what she had was a penance of doing daily Mass for, I think it was 30 days. I'm like, whatever, it's your life, go. I'm not joining in. A little bit into my job, I started getting phone calls from other places that were, two for sure that I remember of, that asked if I would want to work for them. Mm-hmm. And it was back into the power sports world that I really loved, and I enjoyed that, but I turned them down. Partially, I don't know, because I started to feel at home at this place with my new boss and stuff. So, and I was finding enjoyment in the job that I was doing. During that 30 days that she had at daily mass, she ends up meeting a family, a mom and other kids that are there. And she comes back home and she's like, I think we're gonna homeschool. I'm like, oh, okay. So, so more different things coming from this Catholic thing, you know, right? So, okay, Catholic, we're praying to somebody else other than God, and now we're, you know, gonna homeschool kids too. By the third month of working at the new place, I'm not even sure what tipped me, but was talking more and more with Pat, you know, about church as he kept kind of nudging certain things. And I even went to Mass a few times. And it got to the point where I felt that it wouldn't be right to have Lacey and my son going to this church and me going to a different church. But then I was also kind of beginning to be drawn into the Catholic faith. And I was talking with my boss, and I don't know how it was said or what happened or how it went down, but you know, I asked him to be my RCIA sponsor because I was ready now to move into the Catholic world, I guess. I think through all of his little nudges and all of the things that he had talked about, realizing that you're not worshiping Mary and knowing that you're not worshiping saints, you know, it's not about that you're doing that for. Enlightened my mind a little bit more, I guess, and opened it to be more accepting of what the Catholic faith was doing. So with Pat being my boss, my wife doing her daily mass going with her friends,
yes.
Eventually it comes to be found that her new friend that is named Jeanette with 4 kids, I think it was, and helping my wife begin homeschooling and doing this Catholic stuff, comes to find out that Jeanette, is married to Pat, my boss.
That's so funny.
So I don't even remember how that came about, but it was like, what? How did, you know? So God's, you know, he was moving his magic, you know, Lacey becoming friends with a person that becomes pretty instrumental in my life, right?
Yeah.
So
he was kind of coming at you from both sides.
Yeah, he was working on her and also really working on me and maybe working through her to help me get to where I am now.
Awesome.
I feel like I get more and more out of church, and I get fed more, and not just by church, but so my boss, the guy who ended up helping me become Catholic, so another thing. So became Catholic, and he's like, oh, hey, we should really go to this retreat together, silent retreat in Demontreville, which is not too far from here. I was like, okay, yeah, how do you do that? And he's like, well, you got to sign up, get on a waiting list, and then if they call you, you just got to say yes. I'm like, all right, we'll do that. So I did that. Him and I signed up. He said he was going to come with me so we could, you know, he could show me the ropes and how this silent retreat thing works. So I get in, and then he has to cancel. I'm like, seriously? I just kind of became Catholic to a point, like maybe 2 years into it, maybe 3. And I end up having to go to this silent retreat thing over in the cities by myself with nobody else, right? So I go to the silent retreat. It's a Jesuit-led retreat, and it was weird. You get there, everybody's talking, and it's just da-da-da-da-da-da, and then after supper, everything just goes pitch silent. So no more talking, and then you go through some talks with a priest that's leading it. Getting there and starting to do what the Jesuits do, just in the reflection, in the readings. It was the 3rd day of being there, I think, is like where I fell down to my knees, and I honestly feel at that point is when I really kind of, I mean, always been with Jesus, but at that point is when I gave Jesus, you know, my life. And that was a huge moment for me. Yeah. Even so much so that this year my oldest got to go with me because he's old enough. And it was before or after, it was at the end of the retreat, the new people get to speak on why they came there or whatever. And he got up and he was like, my dad came here, blah years ago, 8 years ago. And when he came home, he was a totally different person. And then I wanted what he had. So he's been waiting since I've been there. And that has been my main yearly retreat that I go to. And now there's a new one in February that I go to that's different through our church that we have. But and getting to meet great men with the same faith, the same love for God and Jesus. And yeah, it's been a good journey.
That's awesome. What would you think, so the main sort of stumbling blocks that you'd really said, I definitely don't want to be Catholic because they worship Mary or...
Incense.
I
disliked that so much. Because I would have gone a number of times to like funerals and stuff like that for people who are Catholic, and it was weird. I mean, you guys are kneeling, and then you're standing, and then you're kneeling, and then you're standing, and then you're chanting, and then you're smelling this incense stuff that you're walking around up and down, and you're squirting people with water, and it's like, what are you guys doing? So all of that would be what probably made me back up the most.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then as you talk to Pat or as you talk to Lacey, some of those walls kind of were able to be taken down?
Yeah, they were able to be taken down. In the past priest, pastor, whatever, that we had, there was a few things that him and I got to talk about a little bit too that he had helped maybe break down a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm. That understanding that in fact Catholics do not worship Mary, we don't worship the saints, and where the different things come from, the reasoning behind the kneeling and the standing and the incense. Once those pieces were put in place, then
it was okay. Then you could understand it, right? You could actually be a part of it and respect that because you knew the meaning to it.
As you've come to embrace the faith, the Catholic faith and the Christian faith more fully, because maybe you didn't really ever grasp the Lutheran faith very fully.
Yeah, right.
But as you come to grasp your Christianity more fully, what are the fruits of that? What would you say you've seen out of that?
Peace, joy, even perhaps if it's in suffering, hope, love and care. Yeah.
And the silent retreat you found particularly pivotal, obviously giving your life over to Christ, so making him, you're in charge, Lord, and it's not me driving the cart anymore, which is super important in any faith, steps. What was it about the silent retreat that do you think that led you to make that step?
Honestly, I don't know. I think it starts on Thursday evening and goes till Sunday night. And it's complete silence, and you get to reflect through most of that weekend. And that retreatant leader that was there was phenomenal. He gave you a lot of meat to have to chew on and to think about. And when I was doing the Stations of the Cross is when that all happened. Okay. So it's a beautiful place. But anyways, they have the Stations of the Cross outside, so you get to go to each station and do that all by yourself. Honestly, I think it was just God, and I was in the right point of mind, and I was open and say vulnerable, right?
Sure, ready to
receive. And ready to receive, and then, bam. So.
Yeah. He's just waiting for that opportunity for you to
get to the right point in my life. Yeah. I took that step, took that leap, right? Mm-hmm. And then I feel, and I believe it too, but I got to that point, and that was great. But then something comes up that, if you want to keep going, you do have to take the next step. Yes. So you do need to do something more. So it's not like I'm great and holy or whatever, but I'm up to, like, every other week I do confession and adoration. But it seems like each step I get closer to being, and growing in my faith and doing things, the better it gets.
Yeah. The closer you're growing to Him, the more you're able to see and feel the fruit and receive the gift. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story with us. And if you guys enjoyed watching and you want to learn more or hear more testimony stories, please stay tuned, like and subscribe. And thanks for watching.